Hello. You can't see me because I'm wearing the cloak of invisibility. Or, more appropriately, I'm just not standing sitting in front of my sewing machine right now. I wanted to get out of the way to show you the quilt that I have been working on for the past 2 Fridays. Now, the top is all done. I may put borders on it. I really haven't decided yet. It is a lovely size for a throw. It still needs to be quilted, but I did want to show you that I got it done. And I'm so proud of myself because I took the time to put this on my floor and lay it out so that I got these blue stripes kind of coming in and then the low volumes going right through the middle. And I just absolutely love the way it looks. This is beyond, I'm in love with it. I'm in love with everything about it. So if you want the link for that pattern, I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head, but I do know it is linked in the description box of last week and the week before's live stream. I need to update the thumbnail to show this quilt so that you guys can get to it easily. But that's it. Like, super fun, right? Oh, layer cake links. That's what it was. Layer cake links. Hey, everyone. I see lots of folks in the chat. I just want to give a few folks a shout out. I see Lori is here from Vegas. Melody is here. I also see Kimberly. I love that. Kim, K-Y-M, Burley. Hello. Connie is here as well. We see Free Spirit. She said, that's my favorite tune. Donna Bogart is here. Alicia is here. Jean is here. She said, Friday already. It's hot in Nevada. Lots of fires. Ooh, oh no, oh no. I'm sorry about that. I never watched the news, so it's a fault that I have. So I usually don't know what's going on. All right, lots of folks saying the quilt is beautiful. Folks are saying they have this shirt. B. Spalding says, finally got to catch a live. Well, it's actually live. Hello from Southeast Michigan. Hello, B. Hello. Deborah Lord is here. She says, good day. And I can't read anymore. Mine says hello. Okay, you know what? I'm going to stop telling you all the people that say hello because I will be here for a while. I still haven't acknowledged everybody. Just know, if I didn't call your name out loud, I do see you. I've got the chat up. Feel free to tag me if you have any questions. If I still don't answer them, Alicia's in the chat. You can tag her at Alicia Bryant 22 and she'll get that texted over to me so that I will see your comment and be able to address it. The pattern that I'm going to be working on tonight is another fat quarter shop pattern. It's a free pattern. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to do, but this pattern looks easy. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But before I do, I just want to make sure I've got all of my announcements and things out there so that you know what's going on. This weekend, if you are going on the Alaska cruise and you are taking the class to make that bargello, that's what we're teaching. Make sure that you are checking your email because there is a VIP, I'm sorry, not VIP, there is an Alaskan cruise Zoom. I think it's for all the cruisers, not just, no, it's the retreaters. Sorry. All of the retreaters, there is a Zoom tomorrow to go over part 2 of all of the instructions for putting that lovely bargello into your subsets. Yeah, you're not going to get the full pattern, but we're going to break you down through the second part of your homework so that you're ready to get on board and work through the bargello together. Okay. I think that's the only announcement that I really had. Nothing else is coming up, I don't think. And you know what? If it is, somebody will let me know. I'm sure I will remember it somewhere. So let's just go ahead and get into what I'm going to work on tonight. So I got another pattern. It is the Jelly Roll Relish. This is a free pattern from Fat Quarter Shop. And I'm going to do this with 2 jelly rolls. I want to let you know that as we're going through this, the link for the pattern is actually in the live chat. It is right at the bottom of the live chat and it's pinned and it's going to stay there throughout the entire live stream. So you don't have to worry about asking me what the pattern is. We don't have to get it for you. It is in the description box if you want it there too, but it is down at the bottom. So I am excited about this because all I need are 2 jelly rolls to put it together. And we'll walk you through that in just a moment. But the quilt measures a good size too, so I'm also excited about that. All right, so the Jelly Roll Relish pattern, finished size is going to be 58 70.5 inches by 70.5 inches. And I think it might be a little hard for you to see all of the text here, so just bear with me. I'm highlighting the notes that I need to remember as we're working through this. It says I need 2 jelly rolls or 1 jelly roll and some background fabric. I pulled 2 jelly rolls because I think that's going to be the easiest. From my print jelly roll, I'm going to need 32 width of fabric strips. And from my solid jelly roll, I need 39 2.5-inch strips. And then from there, we're going to start putting our fabrics together. What we need to know for tonight is just what fabric A and C are. So when you're looking at the pattern, the first step is to make your strip sets and then cut those down into your blocks. That's your block. Your strip sets are made up of AC, AC, A. You've got 5 strips every time, 3 prints, 2 backgrounds, and you're going to put the 2 backgrounds in between the A fabrics so that you've got some negative space there. So what they want you to do is sew together your AC fabrics, make a bunch of those strip sets, and then you're going to press them and subcut them. And then you're going to take fabric D and F to put sashing in between the blocks and in between the rows so you put the quilt center together. And then finally, you'll bring in fabric E and fabric B to do your piano key border, and then you'll be done. Fabric G on this is going to be for your binding. So I am going to get started with fabric A and fabric C. I've got 2 jelly rolls here. You guys want to know what I'm working with, so let's break it down. The first one, which is probably not so fun, not so extra, this is a coriander seeds jelly roll. I picked this up from Heavenly Stitches in Kingsport, Tennessee. I remember buying this. And then I remember thinking, why did I buy that? I'm never going to use it. So it's sat here for like 3 years at least, with no intention to do anything with it because I usually just cut my background. But this time I'm going to use this jelly roll, and it is tone on tone, so I'm really excited about that. The second jelly roll that I am bringing to the table tonight is Canning Day by Corioder. This is an older line. I only have the 1 jelly roll of this. I love this line. Look at all those beautiful colors, and I'm really excited to work with this. The struggle is I can only use 32 of these. So we're going to break open the jelly roll and we're going to pull out 32 strips that we want to use for tonight's quilt. Now here's what I'm going to do. I have this whole mess. In fact, I should have shaken it out. I'm going to shake this out to get some of this jelly roll dust onto the floor. The vacuum can clean it up later. I'm going to prioritize using strips that have maximum contrast with the white tone on tones. And so that means all of these fabrics that have the white background to them, they're coming out. I'm not using them because they will get lost if I put them up against a white strip. I'm going to prioritize using saturated pieces. This one and this one feel like it could be a little too light, so I'm just going to pull that out. If I need them, I can come back and get them. But right now I am trying to make my must use these pile and then my I need something else pile. This one does have some white in it, but I think the background is saturated enough that it won't get lost. This one I'm going to put in my maybe pile. We'll keep that, and then I'm just going to flip through. We will take these 2 out. All right. So now if I've done my math correctly, then I should have 32 strips left. And if I don't, we'll have to go pull some from the leftovers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm gonna pull that one away, 8, 9, 10. So this is a stack of 10. Then we'll count another 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we've got 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I need 5 more strips. So we'll come over to my maybe pile, and I'm going to pull out 5 strips that I feel like could hold their own. I feel like this is one, so that's 1. This is another that could work. 2. I feel like I'm going to have to bring these florals. 3, 4, and 5. These will be my extras. Who knows, maybe those can make it into the binding somewhere. That'll be fun. All right, now that I've got all of my print fabrics chosen, I'm going to set those aside, and I'm going to bring in my jelly roll, my solid jelly roll. And I'm just tapping some of, you can kind of see over here, I'm tapping the fabric dust from the jelly roll off of the edges so that I can get those off. Then I'm going to just open this up. I did see Alicia made sure that I have my eyes on this question. Are you going to be filming some segments of the sewing on the cruise for those of us who are not going? Probably not. I'm not planning to make a video of the cruise. I might do a recap. There might be some like little segments, behind the scenes videos. But my focus is going to be to teach the folks that are on the cruise, not to create a video of the project for others to do. If you're asking, will there be a video to see what the cruise was like? Probably. If you're asking, will there be a tutorial video for what you're teaching on the cruise? No. I hope I answered that. All right, I need 39 of these. So honestly, they're all white tone on tone. Oh, what happened to this one? Look at this. I have never in my life seen a strip of fabric cut like that from a jelly roll. Now, I wonder if this is a bonus, because I have seen sometimes I get the charm pack. I have seen sometimes that it's cut a little weird in the charm pack, but it ends up being a miscut and it's an extra piece of fabric. So I'm curious if this is extra. I'm just going to count really quick. All right, we're going to start over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. And then we'll come down here. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. No, it's not. This is one of my 42 strips, but fortunately, I only need 39, so this one can go away. We'll put that in the scrap pile. All right, let's get to making our strip sets. So I don't want this to be overly complicated. I'm sure Alicia's probably sitting out there going, how are you going to figure out which ones go together? Well, I'm just going to try to mix them up as best I can. So I'm going to create some piles for the different colors that I've got going on. I've got my reds right here. And then I've got these beautiful charcoal grays. I've got my pinks, which I classify a different color, so I'm going to put those there. I've got all these lovely greens. And then I've got more reds. I've got some bright pinks. I've got more yellow. I'm going to put the yellow here with this too. In fact, I'm going to put this here with the reds because some of them have that. That'll work. Yep. Then I'll put this with the yellow, and then I've got the pretty teals or aquas. So we'll put these down here. Okay. So I've got these classified separated into my gray, my turquoise, my yellow, my green, and my pink. So I'm going to try to pick one I'm going to pick 3 for every block, but I'm going to make sure that I'm not pulling 2 from the same pile. So for example, the first one that I put together, I can pull a gray, I can pull a green, and maybe I can pull one of these really pretty blues. Those are the 3 that I'm going to work with to start with. I'm going to set these aside, and now I'm going to bring in 2 of the tone-on-tones. I'm not worried about which one I have, which one I don't have. I'm just going to focus on bringing in 2. They're all tone-on-tone. The print is going to be so subtle, nobody's going to notice what they are. So I'm not going to worry about it. You'll notice I am working with the strips straight off of the jelly roll. I am not starching the fabric first. Urgh, I know, I'm a little nervous too, but that's okay. Everything's going to be fine. The reason why I am not starching first is because I don't want to starch every single strip. It's going to be fine. But what I can do is after all of my strip sets are pieced, I can starch it then, because when I starch this fabric, it's going to cause it to shrink between the 2 selvage ends, not between the 2 pinked edges. So if I build my strip sets out and then when I go to press it, I give it starch at that point, I'm still introducing starch into my project. I'm doing it before I cut, and it'll help my blocks lay a little bit flatter and I'll get a really crisp cut. So that's my plan, is to build my strip sets and then add starch after they're sewn together. So I am lining up 2 pieces right sides together, a print and one of the tone-on-tones, and I'm just going to sew with 1/4 inch all the way down this long edge. Now I am changing my stitch length to be about 12 stitches per inch on my vintage Singer. For those of you that are working on a more modern machine, you might want to consider changing your stitch length to a 1.8 or maybe even a 1.6. And the reason for that is because we're going to subcut these strip sets. And when we do that, sometimes if you're stitching with a 2.0 or bigger stitch length to do your piecing, those stitches can pop out, just 1 or 2 from the edges. And if the stitch is bigger, like a 2.0 or a 2.5, when that 1 stitch pops, sometimes it's enough that makes you have to go back in and re-sew. So if you have a tighter stitch length, then if 1 or 2 of the seams or 1 or 2 of the stitches pop on the edge, it's not going to be as big of a gap, if that makes any sense. I did not pin any of these together. I'm just laying them right sides together, and I am taking a minute every so often to adjust the fabric that is in front of the presser foot to make sure that my 2 raw edges right here are nice and lined up. Then, just to minimize the amount of leaders and enders I need to use, I'm going to bring in another print and my next background. I will put these right sides together and start stitching onto the next 2 for the same block. Then I'll snip this one off, pull it over here. I'll turn on my iron because we're going to need that. And I'm just going to keep stitching. Ooh, there we go. Now I'm going to bring in that strip set that I made before, and against the white, the tone on tone, not the print, I'm going to bring my third final print in, and I will line it up with that white, and we're going to sew all the way down. The beautiful thing about this is we can press however our little heart desires on this, because at the end of the day, we're not going to need to nest any seams when we put our blocks together. So I'm going to press all of these underneath the print fabric just to kind of help minimize ghosting and shadowing in the quilt. I wondered what was going on here. My tension feels just a little bit off. I can see it. There's some areas in here where it's a little ruffled, and I think my machine is not properly threaded. So I'm going to take a moment. Yeah, it sure wasn't. I'm going to take a moment just to unthread Ruby and rethread her so that we've got everything going through all the different pathways. It's so funny. You can be working on a quilt and not even know it. Just because your machine was threaded when you started doesn't mean that you don't have to stop and rethread sometimes. Put that in there, put that in there, there, and now we'll put the thread through the needle. Let's count how many times I have to stab the needle before the thread goes through. There's one. Let's get a clean edge. It's a little frayed. Okay, this is attempt number 2. Get in there, get in there. Ah, you snuck out. That was 2, it didn't work. Let's see if third time is the charm. It sure was, there it goes. Let me just make sure this is not wrapped around. It is not perfect. All right. I feel like the ruffling on this isn't completely horrible, but I just want to make sure that the seam is secure. Here's what I'm thinking. I would rather take the time now to re-sew those seams, and I'm just going to stitch right over top what I had before, than to get the whole quilt put together and have these seams come apart later. All this work, and all I need to do is just put a couple more seconds into it and just stitch right over the seams that I had to make sure that everything goes together the right way and the seams are nice and secure. There we go. Much better. Hello, Angela from Northwestern Ontario. Hi, Donna. Donna Mom says, just me being fashionably late to the Jelly Roll party. Hello. These two look okay. This one's really good. This one I'm not so sure about, so I'm going to smooth this one out and restitch it. All I'm doing is running my hands right over top of that seam, and it's taking any ruffles that are in there and it's just pushing them out through the end. There we go. Much better. Also, Ruby needs some oil. I can hear it. I don't know if you guys can. I can. So we're going to take the bobbin out. Oh, good thing we did, because that bobbin's almost empty. And now I'm going to grab another bobbin. I probably would not have been able to get through a whole seam on that. I'm going to find the end on this. It's one of those pre-wound bobbins from Fat Quarter Shop. So I'm not, sorry, not Fat Quarter Shop, Featherweight Shop. Duh. All right, I'm going to lift up the little gate here, and I'm just going to put a drop of oil in the 6 o'clock position right inside of the bobbin casing. And that's going to help lubricate the bobbin as it's going around the inside. You don't want metal on metal just going by itself. I'm also going to take a moment, since I am oiling, to just put some oil in over here. It's been a minute since I've done that. I know it has. So everywhere where there's metal on metal, I'm just putting a drop of oil. And then there are some pinholes that I do have to rotate my, there it is. I have to rotate my needle to access, and then I'm going to put a drop of oil in those. And now she should sound a whole lot better. I'm not going to bother doing down below, though certainly that is part of oiling the machine. I'm sure somebody out there is going to ask, why didn't you do the bottom? Because I'm lazy. I'll do the bottom tomorrow. She'll get a good grease tomorrow. Put the cap back on so this doesn't spill all over the room. There we go. Unfortunately, I have to rethread the machine. So let's see how many times. One. Oh, first time. How about that? How about that? Now we'll put our bobbin back in. And we're going to join the two sets that I have here, making sure that I am putting a print next to a background. It doesn't matter which one. I'm not being particularly picky about how these are going together. I'm just making sure that I have a white separating each of the prints. Put this down. You hear the difference? I mean, I do. That's right, Joyful. She says, Ruby just needs a little love. She sure does. She needs a good spa day. I owe her that. Melody says, sounds much better. Thank you, Melody. She is humming again, isn't she? My iron is still on and it's nice and hot, which is great because I want to go press this long strip set before I move on to my next one. There we go. I have got so much fuzz all over my black pants. It's hilarious. It's bad. It's real bad. All right, I'm going to pull this out from my machine. I'm going to take it over here to my ironing surface, and I'm just going to lay it down and just kind of finagle it with my fingers. I'm going to finger press it. So what that means, for those of you that don't know, finger pressing is just rubbing my finger along the seam, making sure that the fabric is going in the position I want it to go in. And so in this case, I am making sure that the fabric is going underneath the green, not underneath the white. So I'm just folding it over and then creasing it with my fingernail. You can feel with your fingertips which direction the seam is going. So you don't have to do this from the back. You can do it by touch, but you could certainly press this from the back. This is not meant to lock in our seam. This is meant, for me, it's just meant to get things laying approximately where they need to be so that I can convince it to stay there with an iron. So I'm going to come over here. I am going to press this from the back first. You don't have to. I'm just choosing to do that. Making sure that all of the fabric is going underneath the prints. It's a little awkward ironing when I'm doing it at an angle, so I'm turning my whole body over so I can do this. Now I'll do the next section. I can do almost about half. And it was a little finicky because I got some of that bubbling in there when I did the first seam. So this first one might need a little bit more convincing with the iron, whereas the other ones might be a little bit easier to put together. Okay, now that I've got my strip set pressed from the back side, I'm going to press it now from the front side. Again, I'm being a little extra with this one just to get some of that waviness out of here. And at this point, I'm going to bring in my starch. So I'm just going to spritz each of the blocks or each of the sides of the strip set. I am using Faultless spray tonight. It's because it's what was over here and it's what I had on hand. Okay, now I'll come in with my iron and I'm just going to slowly press all of this so that everything stays nice and straight. All I'm doing is picking up the hot iron and setting it down on top of the fabric, making sure to get those seams nice and crisp. And I want to dry up any of that Faultless that has been sprayed on the fabric. It's going to leave behind a finish on the fabric that makes it feel a little flatter, and it'll press so much nicer going forward. And any shrinkage that the starch was going to add to the fabric is being done before I cut this into my strip sets. So I'm good to go. Looks like Ian is here. Hello, Ian. Michelle the Quilter is here. Hello. Then I'm going to do this next one. We're going to repeat this until all of our strip sets are sewn together. When we do this for our strip sets, for the blocks, we only need 30 of those 32 that I pulled, and for the solids we only need 20. The other leftover prints, so the other two, because I pulled 32 I think, and then 20 from the background, were those leftover strips are going to come out and we're going to use them for other parts of the block. For block A, we need 30 of the print and 20 of the background strips. This is what my first strip set looks like. Isn't she pretty? And it's nice and flat. I'm going to show you how I subcut this though, so that I can just kind of get into assembly line. I'm going to set this over here. So it says on the pattern that we need to subcut these into fabric A. Okay, so each Relish strip set should be cut into two 10.5-inch squares and then two 4.5 by 10.5-inch rectangles. So this, I believe, is 10.5. Let me get my ruler and just double check. It sure is. It's 10.5. So, I'm going to need slightly bigger ruler. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take my 10.5-inch mark and I'm going to bring it in on top of my strip set. Let me go to the overhead camera so you can see. This ruler does not cover the entire block, so I got to be a little creative with how I'm going to do this. I know I want my ruler turned sideways for this step because it's a 12-inch ruler. I can get that 10.5-inch mark. So my 10.5-inch mark that's right here is over about an inch or so because I don't want the selvages. Then the next thing that I'm doing is just making sure as best as I can all of these seams are lined up on a line on the ruler. If they're a little wonky, they're a little wonky, but get them as straight as you can be, because that's going to help you make sure that you're cutting straight this way and you get nice straight strips. Once I have that lined up, then I'm going to bring in a second ruler and I'm just going to nest these together, tapping my finger right here and sliding it back and forth to make sure that there's no gap, there's not one jugging out more than the other. And then I'll come in and I'll just sail through all of that and then pull this aside. Now I've got that nice clean edge. Unfortunately, because I did not start with a nice clean edge, I do have to repeat a cut here. So I'm going to come back in. I'm going to line up the 10.5-inch mark on that cut edge, and I'm going to put the seams on my ruler. I'm making sure that the ruler goes past up there so that I can get a nice cut and extends past here. And now I'll clean up this side. This is extra. I'm not going to keep it, but this is the block that we need. We need 2 of these from each strip set. If you have a 10.5-inch square, that would actually be perfect. And you know what? I don't. I have 10. Do I? Maybe I do. I have 10-inch squares. That's a 9-inch. I think I only have 10, like, whole numbers. I don't think they made them in halves. No, this is 10. Now, here is the trick. I could maybe fudge it a little bit, but then I wouldn't have a square, I would have a rectangle. I'm just coming over to look and see. I do have a 16-inch by 16-inch square ruler. I don't want to deal with that because it's going to be way too big to put on that area, but I can use it on my cutting station on the other side of the room if I wanted to. But I see a tool over here that maybe I can use. Well, yes, I can. Okay, we're going to use this. So at Quilt Retreat, the Quilt Retreat I go to in Alabama, we have a giveaway table. It's basically everybody brings in things that they don't want anymore. I'm trying to think if I bought this or I got it from the table. I think I got it from the table because it definitely looks used. Anyway, you bring in the idea with this game that we play, you bring in things that you don't want anymore, kind of like a D-stash, and you put them on the table. And throughout the entire retreat, everybody's name goes in a bag. And every so often we ring a bell and we pick 1 or 2 or 3 names out of the bag. And when your name is called, you get to go up to the freebie table and pick whatever you want. And then once the bag is empty, we put all the names back in there and we start over. So this is a ruler that I believe I picked up off of the table, but maybe I bought it. I think I picked it up. Forgive me if somebody sent this to me. I was like, here, have it. But it's a quilt in a day ruler, and this can be used to square up. It's a 12.5-inch ruler, and so I can use this to find those markings and get my blocks nice and squared up. So I can put 10.5-inch here, 10.5-inch there, and then clean up around the sides. All right, so let's bring over our strip set and see if we can get another 10.5-inch with a nice square ruler, because that's going to get better results than trying to put 2 rulers together. So I'm going to find my seams where the fabrics come together, and I'm going to try my best to get those nice and straight. So I'm looking mostly at the ones in the middle to make sure that that middle seam is nice and straight. Then the other 2 should be approximately the same size. This is, or the same direction. This is a little past 10.5. That's because I want to square this up. I'll cut through that, and now I'll turn this around and we'll put that fresh cut on my 10.5-inch line. And then I'll come over here and slice through there. And that is a much easier way to cut my 10.5-inch squares. I'm glad I went over there and looked. All right, my pattern's going to come over here. This is the block that I cut before. I'm going to use that to subcut my 4.5-inch pieces. So we'll keep that there for a moment. This is still a little wavy, so we're going to get that waviness pressed out with a little bit more starch. Becca is like a mad scientist tonight. I feel like I've been going a mile a minute. My mouth has been going nonstop. Hopefully that's entertaining for you and not annoying. Oh, goodness. I signed some paperwork this week for another, I won't give you all the details, but I will tell you I have another cruise coming up, and this one is going to be just me teaching. I'm not partnering with anyone to do it, and it is going to be in 2028, and I have been working really hard to make it affordable. So keep your eyes peeled. More to come on that soon. And if you're looking for a little bit of a splurge, don't forget we still have the Australia trip that you can sign up for. Okay, I'm putting all of this. See, this is like a little bit off. We're going to use it. It'll be fine. I think my seam allowance was not great when I sewed these together. I might have been going a little too fast. So the next strips that we sew, I'm going to do a little bit better. I'm going to use this seam guide. I'm going to bring it down and slide it over just a couple hairs so that it is right on that 1/4 inch mark. Then I'm going to do this really neat thing. Check this out. I'm going to bring in one of my scraps. I know these are 2.5 inches. I'm just going to cut a few 2.5-inch squares off of this. I just need 3 for this test. This is going to help me figure out if my seam allowance is correct. And I might have to do this a couple times, so I'm going to cut a few of these squares. Ooh, pretty. Ooh, prettier. I'm taking 2 strip sets that are already folded in half, and I'm folding them in half again. And I'm stacking them on top of each other, and I'll bring in my 10.5-inch ruler, and I'm going to cut up all of these into 2.5-inch squares. I'm not worried about wasting fabric because at the end of the day, I can always use these as leaders and enders, or I can use them in my tiny piecing. So I've got a nice clean edge on that side. Now I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to cut a 10-inch strip out of this. So I'm going to put the 10-inch mark right at that edge. I'll cut this off. Now I'm going to move it over 2.5 inches, which is 7.5. I'll cut this, move it over 2.5 inches, which takes me to 5. Move it over 2.5 inches, which takes me to 2.5. Which, by the way, if I wanted to, I could be using the lines to square up as intended, 2.5 by 2.5. There we go. Now I've got all of these. So to test my seam allowance, I need 3 of these squares. So it's important for me, so that I can show you, that I pull 2 of one and 1 of the other. The 2 of the one will go on the outsides and the 1 of the other will go in the middle. I'm going to make sure that the pinked edges are going up and down because I didn't cut those. I want to make sure that these pieces here are good because I'm testing my seam allowance from a measurement that I know is exactly 2.5. So I'm going to put them right sides together. I'll feed this into my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch all the way down with what I believe is my 1/4 inch. I'll do that on one side of the center square. I'll bring it over and do that on the other side of the center square. Make sure I get my fabric all nice and lined up. It's a little flimsy because I didn't starch it first. And then once that's done, I'll take it over to my iron. I will press this. Doesn't matter which direction the seams go in. I'm just pressing to one side. And then I'll bring this back up here, and this piece right here in the middle should measure exactly 2 inches. So I'm going to lay this down so that the 1 inch is on that side. And I can see right here, perfect. The 1 inch marking is on one seam and the 3 inch marking is on the other seam. This piece is perfectly 2 inches wide. So I know that my seam allowance is set great. It's good to go. The next thing I'm going to do, just to make sure I know what I'm doing, not all fabric is cut the same. So I'm just checking to see from pinked edge to pinked edge, is that really 2.5 inches? And it looks like for this, they may have started the 2.5 inches from the inside, not the outside peak. I'm not going to worry about it. It's just a couple of threads. It'll be fine. So now that I've readjusted my magnetic seam guide, I'm going to work on my next strip set. So I'm going to pull out 2. I got some fabric dust in my lungs. Pull out 2 whites. And then I want 3 colors. So I'm going to pull a yellow. I'm going to pull a green. I'm going to pull a pink. I saw somebody in the chat asking if I could give the name of the location that my friends go to, the Alabama retreat. It is the Grand Oak Retreat in Scottsboro, Alabama. It is not a retreat center where you sign up to take classes or join on your own. You have to bring your own group. But I do highly recommend. Unfortunately, I'm not going back next year. Not because I didn't love it, not because I don't like the people that are there. I just can't handle a 15-hour drive to go to retreat anymore. It's too much. Honestly, I don't even want to handle a 10-hour drive. So even if they move just a couple hours north, it's just too much driving. I'd rather go to some place that's within 3 to 4 hours of home. Maybe 5. Hello, Joe. Joe Robinson is here. Looks like Karen just bought a Baby Lock Anthem. Wonderful. Congratulations on your new purchase. All right. I'm going to take a moment to press every step of the way. I feel like I'm going to get better results if I don't just try to rush through it and cut steps. I always find, and it's so weird because I know quilters like Tiffany who can cut steps and get beautiful results, but when I skip steps, I don't get beautiful results. So I'm going to take my time to do all of the steps as I go. I'm going to sew a seam and then I'll dry press that seam. And then I'll come in and sew the next piece on, dry press. And then once the whole strip set is done, then I will give it some starch. Can you believe tomorrow is August? Donna says, I am going on a virtual quilt retreat August 12th. No driving or flying. Awesome. Oh, here, let me give you the lens of Ruby so you can see me sewing. Did you cut the 10? No, I did not cut the 4.5-inch pieces. I will do that in a moment. My ADD-ness decided it was just time to start working on the next strip set. That's all. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to press this underneath the print with a dry iron, no starch, no steam. This is just to get it to lay a little bit flatter. I probably could even just finger press it, but I'm not going to skip this step. I get better results when I use my iron. I get better results in my strip sets. And that's not for me, that's not me scolding you. That's me convincing myself that I need to take all of these steps and not cut them out because I'm jonesing to just start skipping steps. We're going to be a good quilter and follow the steps. The quilt police would be proud. All right. Now I've got white on either side, so I'm just going to add the yellow and the green to the top and the bottom. Just keep sewing, just keep sewing. Get this all down here so it's off the edge of the table. There we go. I'm not going to, guess I am. Yes, I am. I'm going to follow the steps. I was like, I'm not going to press this seam because it's not in the way. Nope, we're going to follow the rules. We're going to do it in order. If I skip steps, it'll be off camera where nobody can be like, you skipped a step. And I can just pretend that I followed them all. All right. Now we'll come in with my last strip for this strip set. Alicia said she feels like I need a babysitter tonight. I need somebody up here to smack my hands. Every time I try to skip a step, somebody needs to come in with a ruler and be like, no! Don't skip the step! Oops. The bottom piece was not lined up. Better to fix it now than later. It wasn't off by much, but it was off. And I would rather fix this now than to have it be a problem later. I'm just going to rip to where it started going crooked.
No, don't skip a step.
Don't give Ian access to your smart home, because then he just starts sending messages over all of your speakers anywhere he is. He can be the other side of the world and be like, hi, what are you doing? Or start playing with the lights and turning them off and on. Ask me how I know. I don't know if you heard him pop up on my smart speaker. I think that was his way of smacking my hand. Hello, Josh. I heard about your prize from Festival of Quilts. Congratulations, buddy. I believe, if I'm understanding, that Josh won a ribbon for a quilt at Festival of Quilts. Is that right? Shirley says, Swell is giving me fits. I have so many twisted seams because apparently I don't know how to follow instructions. Well, you'll be able to quilt through those. It'll still be okay. Nobody's going to take apart your quilt to look at whether or not your seams are twisted. You'll be all right. All right, now that I've got that, I'm just going to bring in my faultless. I'm going to spritz this whole strip set. And then I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to press from the first spot that I put the faultless on. Maybe you don't need to do that, but I feel like, is anybody nervous that I'm holding it this close to my face? Just kidding. I feel like if I go back to the beginning and then starch it, I've given it a little bit of time for the starch to kind of settle into the fibers of the fabric. I don't know if you have to do that. I think it's probably just best practice. You know what? You don't have to do that. No, you don't have to do that. I choose to do that. I don't want anybody to feel like you have to do all the things that I'm doing tonight, because then it starts to give quilt police vibes, and that is the last thing I would ever want any of you to feel like. There are the only rules that exist in quilting are the rules that help you make a quilt or a project that brings you joy and lets you be creative. That's it. Everything else, it doesn't need to be worried about. And if somebody tells you it does, maybe reconsider asking them for their opinion. Now, if you're talking to somebody and being like, my points never line up and I don't know why, and they tell you what you could do to get better points, that's a different story. Unsolicited advice is usually quilt police. Like when you're like, oh, this is how I make a strip set, and then somebody's like, that's not how I do it. I do it this way. Okay, I didn't ask you. All right, that is now cut. So I'm going to take these blocks. I'm going to play with them again in a moment. I'm going to come back to that. But first, I'm going to bring in my nicely pressed strip set. What's the difference between starch and sizing? I don't know. This is spray starch. I don't know. Maybe somebody in the chat does. All right, I'm going to bring in my quilt and a day ruler. I'm going to line things up so that I got 10.5 inches. See, this is bothering me a little bit. Let me walk you through this. I am putting 10.5 inches right down here on this bottom edge of fabric. And then I am counting up 2.25 because I've only taken 1/4 of an inch off of this piece, and I've got my line right there. I count up another 2.25. This is actually 2.125. It's a little too small. And then the same thing here. And then what ends up happening is right up here, it's 1/4 inch smaller than what it needs to be, which is what made me get frustrated with these blocks, because these were not measuring 10.5 inches this way. They're measuring 10.25 this way. Now I can go in and rip these seams out and make the seam allowances smaller and it'll work out okay. But I know that my seam allowance, I remember I tested it, is perfect. It's exactly 1/4 of an inch. And so I'm thinking what might be happening is my seam guide is probably at the right position. But I think a couple of things might be coming into play here. The first one is I may be allowing the fabric to curl up just ever so slightly when it hits my seam guide instead of requiring it to lay flat as it goes through. The second thing that could be playing into this is the fact that the fabric is not starched. Normally, when I'm sewing, I starch my fabric first and then I sew it together. And the reason why I do that is because it gives the fabric a bit of body and it keeps it laying flat and smooth when I'm sewing on it, so I don't get as much flimsy floppity on the fabric as I'm adding my seam. So I'm wondering if that makes a difference. I know it's going to make a difference. So I'm going to pause the project here. And what I'm going to do is not subcut this. I'm actually going to rip my seams out of this strip set and this strip set and re-sew them together. I'm going to starch the fabric and then re-sew them together, starch it again. Why am I doing that? Because I'm off 1/4 of an inch on the block. And that 1/4 of an inch, when I sew it all together, is going to make things not work out the way I want them to. Now, I can recover from that a little bit if I just go through the pattern and everywhere where it says 10.5 by 4.5, whatever, I can just reduce everything by 1/4 of an inch and square it up that way. But I don't want to. I want to try and get it the way the pattern says. If I decide to square everything up 1/4 of an inch smaller, so 10.25 by 10.25, and then 10.25 by 4.25, it's still going to look fine. And what's going to end up happening is you're either going to have 1/8 of an inch off of either end of those fabrics, or 1/4 inch. It's probably divided between all three of them. You're probably not going to notice, is my point. So if you've already started and you're seeing the same thing that I am, you don't have to rip everything out. You don't have to starch it and start over. You can absolutely just square it up that way. So just wanted to let you know why I'm going to stop sewing, which is fine because it is 9 o'clock and I am going to. Starch will definitely cause shrinkage, yes, but the starch only causes shrinkage between the two selvage ends. Let me show you. So here is a little square. Let me get a ruler. If I measure this, it is exactly 2.5 inches from selvage to selvage because the pinked edges are what came cut from the manufacturer. These are already cut, but this is a perfect 2.5 inch square. And just to make sure that it is, just to make sure, I'm going to put it on a ruler and you guys can look at your device and you can see that the only thing that's on here is the pinked edges. So just to be safe, I'm even going to clean up those pinked edges. Everything is exactly 2.5 inches now. I am going to mark this. I use a pen. I'm drawing some blue lines. I don't know if you can see that. I'm drawing some blue lines on there for where the selvage sides would be. Okay, so I'm going to show that to you now. Now I'm going to take this over to my ironing station. I'm going to give it some starch. And now I'm going to press it. Sure made that ink bleed. I don't want to get it on my pressing mat. Where's that crazy cut strip? Here it is. I don't want the ink to bleed. And now I'm going to put my iron on it. And I'm just going to set it there. I'm not going to push it back and forth. When you're ironing, you're moving the iron back and forth over top of the fabric, and that can cause things to stretch and distort. Pressing is just the act of picking up the iron and setting it down and letting it heat the fabric up. Now, I'm going to bring this back over here, and if I'm right, the sides that have the blue lines should now shrink, and when I measure them, the two sides will no longer be exactly 2.5 inches, but the sides without the blue lines will still be exactly 2.5 inches. So here's the moment of truth. I'm going to put this on here. The sides with the blue lines have shrunk. This now measures between the two salvage pieces. This now measures 2 and a little over 3/8, but not 2.5. The other side didn't shrink at all. And I can prove that to you if you want to see it visually. I'll turn this over. I'm going to start at the end here. So the fabric goes all the way to the edge and it hits that 2.5 inch line. Does that make sense? Free Spirit says, I would square up the 1/4 inch difference and live in my happy place. You know, the more I think about it, the more I think I'm probably going to do that, because the reality is I want to just have this quilt done. I'm not going to be doing, I'm not going to keep, I'm sorry, I was reading Josh's comment. Wait, should I stop or keep asking myself, what would Becca do mid-project? Anyway, yeah, no, I think I'm just going to square everything to 10 1/4 by 4 1/4 and 10 1/4 by 10 1/4. And that does mean that not every piece that's in the quilt is going to be the exact same width, but it is going to be what will give me a little bit more joy in the journey and allow me to finish the project sooner rather than later. And since this isn't a super precise quilt that doesn't have any seams that need to be nested, the whole look of this is just having that negative space in between those strips and having the colored strips go straight. We're not going to worry about it. So we're going to recover, and I'm going to commit to recovering by bringing in my blocks and cutting them down to 10 1/4 by 10 1/4. And then I'm going to cut that new strip set. So let me get a bit more starch on here. Since I am cutting this down to 10 1/4 by 10 1/4, I know I can be a bit heavy-handed with the starch because if there was no shrink, if there was shrinkage that I didn't get, now is the time for it to come out, because once I cut it to 10 1/4 by 10 1/4, it's done. All right, I've got 4 pieces here. I'm going to press. The reason why I was talking myself into just starching everything and starting over is because I was worried that whatever was happening was going to cause the legs on this quilt, those vertical bars that we're putting together, to be different sizes that would be visually noticeable. And I really don't think that's going to be the case. We'll give it a trial run with this and see, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be okay. So here's one that's nice and starched. Bring in for the next one and get it flattened out nice and straight with my hands. And then I'll set my hot iron on it. Sometimes it pays to just slow down and not push through. All right, and then this is the last one to press. The other strip set was heavily starched, so it's okay. I don't have to worry about it. Janice says, I enjoy quilting, but I really don't like overthinking and not finishing a project. Yeah, true. Very true. And that's exactly what was starting to happen, is I was overthinking and I was going to end up going back to the drawing board and starting over. And then you all know that this project never would have gotten finished. I would have sewn 3 strip sets together and been done. So this is going to allow me to finish. So that's why we're doing it. All right, now that I've got this nice and ready to go, I'm going to come in and put all of this at 10 1/4 by 10 1/4. Oof. This is interesting. I don't have, oh, yes I do, right there. There's not a 1/4 inch mark. It's only the solid line is the whole number and the dashed line is the half number. But there are 1/4 inch marks and 1/8 marks around the edge of this. So I'm making sure that this is at the 10 1/4 and this is at the 10 1/4, and the 45-degree line is starting down here in the corner and going all the way up. I'm going to slice that off. Slice off over here, and I should be taking the most off of these sides. I should be taking less off of the top and the bottom. These are the sides that I cleaned up, so I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees, and now I'm going to put those nice clean edges that I just made right on the 10 1/4, 10 1/4, and then I'll come in, clean this up, and clean that up. Look at that. Barely anything off of the top and the bottom. So pretty, so much better. And I don't feel like I'm going to notice that some of this isn't exactly the same way. Yvette says, you know, I had that same issue when I did this pattern a couple years ago. 10 1/4 is what I did. Good. I am glad to know that I am not the only one struggling with that. So 10 1/4 it is. There's my first block. I'm going to bring over another block and we're going to square this down to 10 1/4. I really need to invest in a 10 1/2 inch ruler. So we'll put 10 1/4 down there, 10 1/4 up there. This one's a little wonky. This one's wonky and I've got lots, so I'm going to set that aside. We can subcut that for our 4 1/2 inches. I'm going to use this one instead. 10 1/4 by 10 1/4 up there. Make sure that my lines are nice and straight here. Okay, I will clean up the right, clean up the top, turn it around, and finish squaring it up. 10 1/4 by 10 1/4. 45-degree line is starting in the corner and going up to the top right. Trim up the right, trim off the top. And now I have got perfectly 10 1/4 inch. That one's going to go over here too. Now I'm going to subcut from these my 8 1/2, I'm sorry, my 4 inch. But remember, we're doing 4 1/4 because we're taking a 1/4 inch off of all of our cutting instructions. 10 1/4 by 4 1/4. How did you decide which side you take the cut off of? Okay, so I don't have to worry about taking it off of this one or this one because this is what's measuring 10 1/4. I'm taking a 1/4 inch off of here because it was 10 1/4 by 10 1/2 when I was squaring it up. I want it to be 10 1/4 by 10 1/4. Does that make sense? Oh, I just noticed on some of the solid lines on this ruler, you actually do have 1/4 inch marks. Nice. I just didn't have it where I was cutting before, so it's making the 4 1/4 cut a whole lot easier. Okay, there's one. And I think I can get another one out of this, which would leave this to be scrap. 4 1/4 by 10 1/4. Turn it around, and then we'll do 4 1/4 by 10 1/4. There we go. Much better. I have salvaged. And now that I have cut these at the new sizes, I'm committed, and that's what I'm going to do. So I've got my 2 small legs, and I've got my 2 bigger legs from the first strip set, so I will set those aside. This one is scrap, so I'll set that down here. I'm going to clean off my table, and I'm going to bring in my next strip set that I pieced. Where did I put it? Right here. And we're going to cut this one. So we're going to start by opening this up. I'm going to get 10 1/4, which I don't have the dotted lines down here. It doesn't happen between the 10 and the 12 1/2. So it is what it is. 10 1/4 by 10 1/4. Okay. I'm going to slide this over a little bit so that I have my mat underneath the ruler, up and across the top. Flip it around, put the 10 1/4 right there, 45-degree mark right in the bottom left, 10 1/4 both here and here. I've got 3 points that I'm measuring with, which will help me make sure that the block is straight. There's my first one. Do the same thing for the next one. I'll put 10 1/4 right there. Because this is a nice straight line from my previous cut, I might not need to re-square it up. So I'm going to, no, I am. It's not a nice straight line. Something happened. That's fine. 10 1/4, little over 10 1/4. So I'm going to have to clean up the right, clean up the top, turn it around. And now I'm going to put 10 1/4 in the top left, 10 1/4 in the bottom right, and the 45-degree line in the bottom left corner. Yep. Yep. Perfect. Oh. I must have done something off. This measuring 10 1/4 is a little difficult because there's not a marking on there. So let's see if we can give ourselves a reference point, shall we? I'm going to go get from somewhere. I know I have some tape. Where did I put the tape? Oh, it's in my embroidery and notions drawer. It's under... I thought it was here with the thread or the, oh, well, I got finishing tape. That's not what I want. I have some in my hand sewing basket though, so we'll grab that. So I'm grabbing some masking tape or perfect embroidery tape. This is what I use for EPP to do flat back stitches, and I'm just going to mark the ruler because it's killing my brain. There are marks right here. I need to bring that all the way down. I know my tape has a nice straight edge, so I'm just going to pull off a bit of it, just like this. And I'm going to line it up so that it is on, nope, I want it to be bigger. I want it to go from the top to the bottom because I want to line up the 10 1/4 down here and the 10 1/4 up there. So I'm going to pull off a bigger piece. This is going to make my life so much easier. That's big enough. So I'm going to set this right there at 10 1/4, set this at 10 1/4, just like that. And I'll smooth it down, rip it off. And then I'm going to do the same thing this way. $10 1/4. Oh, you know what? I needed to put that on the outside. I'm putting it on the inside of the 1/4 inch mark, and I don't think that's the right way to do it because I want to be able to see the fabric hit the edge. So I'm putting it to the left of the mark instead of to the right of it. So 10 1/4. This is giving me a nice straight edge all the way down. Perfect. Now, do the same thing for the bottom. Nice straight edge all the way across. Yes, that's what I want. And then I might as well do the 4 1/4 while I'm at it. So I'm going to just take this tape, 4 1/4, put it right here. I don't need this one to go all the way down because I do have a registration mark right there that I can line it up with. But I might as well. There, now I have the perfect ruler. All right, I feel much better. Okay, so we're going to put the fabric right at the edge of those masking tapes, and it is good. Look at that. I can see here that it's not underneath the taped edge. I think I could maybe even, I'm just going to test. Shut the front door. Okay, I am now taping from the back side because that little bit of tape gives me an edge that the fabric will bump right up against. So I know from feeling that everything is where it needs to be and it doesn't have to just be looking. You'll be able to go over the edge because it's not going to be super big, but it'll be enough. It'll be enough. And this is all tape that can come off. Okay. Okay. I'll put this on here and then I'll slide it. Yep, it bumped up against there. And oh my gosh. Okay, so tape on the underside of your ruler, not on the top. The top acts as a visual, but the bottom makes a block lock. That's great. Awesome. Okay. I love it. This is going to make squaring up so much easier, you guys. I'm ready. Let's go. Okay, so that's my second block. Now let's do the 4 1/4 by 10 1/4, which means I need this. So I'll slide it off. I'm keeping it short and then I'm pushing it up until it hits that tape. And I'm pushing it up down here until it hits the tape. And then I'm gonna trim, making sure that my seams are straight. Trim up here, trim across there. Now I'll flip it around, put those cut edges against my tape. Look at that. Look at that. So much faster. Tape for the win. Look at that. Yes. And now this is extra. Donna said, very interesting. I know. I agree. I will use leftovers for the scrappy back. That's definitely something I'll think through. Painter's tape or washi tape. Yep. If you wanted that ledge to be thicker, you can just double up the tape. Look at that. I'm impressed with myself. I'm not going to lie. Huh. Tape on my rulers may be my new way to square things. Just saying. Not only do you get to visually see it, but you get the ledge. It's almost like an add a quarter ruler or a block lock. Okay, I'm going to be done for tonight. Though I do have a few folks asking, what kind of tape are you using? Any tape will work. Masking tape, painter's tape, washi tape, although I would recommend the painter's tape or the masking tape over the washi tape because it's going to hold onto the ruler a little bit more. This happens to be the perfect embroidery tape from R&K Distributors. They sell this in embroidery shops, but it's the same thing as frog tape, just in a different color and a different size. So I happened to grab it, even though it's more expensive, because it was sitting right there. But I've got tons of frog tape laying around my sewing room. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good. All right, you guys want to see my pants? Look at this. Look at all. Oh, you can't see. I'm so disappointed. There's a ton of Jelly Roll fuzz on my pants. But you know what it is? It's a little after 9. I am going to allow myself to go have an ice cream and play some video games because I learned how to do this tonight. I overcame a couple of challenges, but I've got my work cut out for me because I will be working on this all through the weekend, and I'm super excited because I figured out a way to square things up without hurting my brain every time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight, guys. Don't forget, I will be live again next week, though I have no idea what I'm going to be working on. So tune in just to find out what the heck I'm going to do. I'll see you guys all in a week. Bye, friends.